Hello, welcome to Blood Moon Oracle. Tonight we are going to take a look at symbolisms around the blood moon. And so this is something that's been coming up for me mentally for a while. And so I've been doing a little bit of study around the blood moon, around moons, around just dibbling into astrology a little bit. And I actually have a history with studying the blood moon, even from a theological perspective as well. And so delving into this has been quite interesting. Actually, understanding it from a different perspective has been quite interesting. And so I am going to actually delve in a little bit and talk about the blood moon symbolism and how it relates to possible everyday living and understanding. We actually have a blood moon that will be coming up here in March of 2025. I believe it's going to be March 14th of 2025. We'll have a blood moon. And let me see, just to let you know, what exactly is a blood moon? It sounds very interesting, and many people would think that it's like scary, but it's not as scary as it sounds. Give me 1 second. I hope you guys are well. Make sure you like, share, comment. And for those of you that are into astrology and all this kind of delving into interesting subjects, I hope you enjoy this. I know I do. And so the blood moon is actually the result of what they call a Rayleigh scattering, a phenomenon also responsible for our sunrises and our sunsets as well. And when sunlight passes through the earth, the atmosphere of the earth, particles in the air actually absorb certain wavelengths of light, right? And once that absorption happens, what's left is the yellows, the oranges, and the reds. And so basically when we see the blood moon, it's the refraction of that light being projected as it passes through the Earth's atmosphere, and then it's cast onto the moon, right? And so that's how we end up with the blood moon. It's almost like taking two totally separate things, or even three. We're talking about the sun, the earth, which is between the sun, and then the moon, right? So we have the earth in between the sun and the moon. And there's this alignment that happens in the moment where the sun is actually shining and passing through the atmosphere of the earth. And as it passes through, as I stated, certain frequencies of light get absorbed, and it only leaves certain colors, which is the yellows, the oranges, and the reds. And that's what's cast as it's casting the light through the Earth's atmosphere onto the moon. And so that's why we call it the blood moon, right? It's because of that, the shadow that happens under the right conditions, under this full lunar eclipse. And so it's quite interesting. I, for one, love those colors, the reds, the oranges, and the yellow hues. Those are like my colors. And let's see. And so that's why we call it the blood moon, because of that. And it happens ever so often, more often than we realize. But many different cultures have many different spiritual, scientific, even practical applications that they apply to this particular phenomenon that happens that we call the blood moon. And so one of the things that I found that was very interesting, that was attached to it as I was just looking in, just pulling out some interesting facts, was that the dark night of the soul is actually attributed or connected or related to the blood moon symbolism. And for those of you that don't know what the dark night of the soul is, it is actually it's like a process that happens during, and I would say during awakening, right? Where you are actually brought face to face with many, and I'll say fears that you might have lying deep within. And it's a time where you are kind of face to face with those fears, worst case scenarios. But it's also a mental process. But during this process where you're actually confronted with your deepest fears, there's a level of awakening happening. There's a level of growth that's taking place. There's a level of like mental maturity that takes place during this process. And it's almost like a spiritual journey that it is said that we all encounter at one point in time. We've just put a name to it. Some of us have, right? And it's a part of the spiritual journey where it becomes very evident, where things kind of reach their lowest. You know, it's almost like being at the bottom of the experience of life, at the very bottom. I guess I could equate it with the Ten of Swords, or even the Nine of Swords. You know, it could even be equated with the Tower as well. But it's equated with swords because it really is it's a mental process that's taking place, known as the dark night of the soul. And it's also considered to be a very essential part of our spiritual awakening. And it's a part that actually teaches us very instrumental and very significant lessons through life. And some might call it a mental breakdown, you know, some might have other names for it, but it's said to have different, you know, stages. And some of them are lighter than others. Some of them are darker and heavier than others. But the dark night of the soul is a concept of what we would call or consider a dark night, where you can't see, and things, or a stormy night where things seem to get worse. It's said the storms get worse at midnight, right? And that term was actually coined by a poet named Saint John of the Cross. And he was a 16th century Spanish mystic and poet. And this was coined around this idea or this understanding of like spiritual depression. But at the same time, there was a lot of value found in that process and is a part of many different spiritual and religious traditions, including Buddhism, like where it's considered to be falling into this void, right? Or falling in a hole, falling in the pit of the void. And so overall, it's considered to be, part of this process where we're learning. It's even considered to be a spiritual teacher. And the dark night of the soul is considered to be a breaking away from all of these illusions around fear and around ego as well. And it shifts us into alignment, and it brings forth the values of what real and true connection to our divine, our creator, and everything around us. And it actually is said to redirect us and point us to things in life that are actually purposeful, and many times our actual mission here on earth, right? And so what many would call depression, others that understand the value of the lows in life would call it the dark night of the soul, right? And I guess it could kind of overlap depending on how you're looking at them, but it's not the same thing. Someone going through the dark night of the soul may be depressed, but not vice versa. Just because you're depressed doesn't mean you're going through the dark night of the soul. It's not the same thing. Because then we're talking about going into like mental disorders, right? So the dark night of the soul is really tied to this bigger meaning connected to our creator, right? Connected to our worldview, our beliefs, our perspectives, habits, thoughts, and relationships. It's almost like a wake-up call. And so this blood moon, right, is said to be like, have some connection like to the dark night of the soul, right? For those of you that don't know, I wanted to explain that the best way that I could. But I also want to talk about some of the symbolisms around the blood moon, as we will be having one coming up here in March of 2025. I believe it's going to be around the 14th. So one of the first things that is related to the blood moon is transformation, right? We just got to talking about that a little bit. The dark night of the soul is one of the signs possibly of transformation and renewal and rebirth. It's like a catalyst for personal growth and spiritual evolution, right? So the blood moon is considered to be a symbol of transformation happening, right? For someone, somewhere, or even overall, right? As creation is evolving, this may be a sign of that. One of the other symbols we're related, if we were to look at it, as I was saying, there's a couple of tarot cards that might point to relating to the blood moon symbolism. One is the Tower, the other is the Death. And these are symbols of sudden change or rapid transformation. Also, things like exploration, right? Definitely tapping into that dark night of the soul energy, being able to explore the deeper dark aspects of who we are. Usually those things that we would normally shy away from, right? But there's a level of encouragement of diving deep into that unknown part of ourselves, the dark, we call it the shadow side, the shadow self, right? Exploration is part of that when we talk about the Tower and the Death in tarot. Also destruction. But there's purpose behind the destruction. It's not just to tear stuff down, but the tower talks about that energy of kind of wiping the slate clean or shaking something, some traumatic event that's like a shaking, and everything that's not rooted and grounded falls off, or everything that's not meant to be there, right, falls off, or it's a leveling down so that something more solid and useful can grow, right? And then the concept of rebirth as well. And we also named the shadows already and dark soul, but also rebirth, right? Talking about that, the energy of destruction, right? After the destruction, there is the promise of something new. It always reminds me of this particular inspirational scripture that says that, God will never allow us to feel pain without planting something new in our spirits. It kind of aligns with that energy for me, understanding that everything has purpose, especially when we talk about endings and destruction. It's understanding that where there is an ending or a tearing down, there will also naturally, right, according to spiritual law, be something to spring up there, or there will be a new beginning, right? And then the next thing is, if we look at it astrologically, like we're looking at the energy of the blood moon may symbolize a time of chaos, right? Where things seem really disordered and very scattered. But again, it's a time of shaking things up, right? To bring order. It's a time of shaking things up to loosen those things that are not fruitful and that are not purposefully aligned, right? It's also a time of illumination, of uncovering things and bringing things to light. And it shifts, amplifying lunar cycle powers as well. And so as the moon shifts and goes through the phases, there is an amplification of the energies through those cycles when we look at it astrologically. The blood moon, as I stated, is a time where there is a specific alignment that happens between planets, specifically the sun, the earth, and the moon, right? And when you think of that synchronicity, it's a specific appointed time where things align perfectly, right? And when you think of the vastness of our universe, even if we're just talking about our particular part of the universe, we have so many, planetary bodies doing their own thing. And for the moment when they align and come together in synchronicity, usually there's some type of specific amplification of energy with that alignment. And many times the energy may mean different things, but it's an amplification of the energies, right? And that's what that means when these three planets align, the sun, the earth, and the moon, creating the blood moon. Now, spiritually, it also means transformation, right? Rebirth. It is also an energy that is recognized through feminine energy of the goddess, right? And so it may be a time where feminine energy is very high and maybe celebrated and acknowledged and recognized as well. This is also pointing to spiritually the natural cycle of life and death. Okay, when we talk about spiritually, I think it was said that there is a blood moon on the actual day that that Christ was crucified, right? I believe it was said, I think that aligns with the blood moon as well. Also, there's meditation. There are rituals that are aligned with this particular time as well. Now, when it comes to things like visions and dreams, the symbolism around the deeper meaning of when we look at certain things in the symbolism where we're talking about change and transitions or profound transformations on a spiritual level. And so if there are dreams that are had during this time, or if you're having dreams of a blood moon, right, it may very well point to the energies around something coming to a change or something transforming in a huge way. It may be a indication that something major is definitely about to happen. And as we talked about the spiritual recognition around the blood moon, meditation was one of those things. And so the focus on meditation is to connect. As I stated, there is a high concentration of energy and focus around the divine feminine energy around the blood moon and these cycles around nature and setting intention. And so this is really a time where many will actually go into solitude or send out lots of intention around meditation in regards to those types of things. Now, when we talk about specifically about the biblical prophecy, there are a couple of mentions of a blood moon in scripture. One is in Joel, talking about the end times and how the blood is said to usher in the great and terrible day of the Lord. It's talking about, let me just pull this up here. Joel is talking about the last days. Let's see. Exactly where that is. Joel chapter 2, verse 21, where it talks about the sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. And so, of course, when we say the moon turning to blood, it's not literal. It's speaking of a color, right? And also, I do feel like there is a need to understand when we're reading different things, especially when it's scripture, there's a need to understand the difference between what was meant to be a pointing to something like symbolism and what is meant to be taken literally. Okay, I believe personally that this was something that was meant to be symbolism, right? It's to turn, the moon will turn into blood. It was not literal, but it was symbolism of the color of the moon. And so it also could point to a specific time, right? Depending on if we take the whole consideration of this one piece of scripture, but also look at the chapter that it was written in, what was happening, right? Also look at the book of the chapter to find out the overall meaning. There is a bit of work that we need to do to really get an understanding of what's being said here and not just take one scripture and draw a whole meaning out of that. But biblically, when we talk about prophecy, Joel is a prophetic book. And there was a reference to the blood moon, even though it was, in other words, it was saying it was going to be like the color of blood. I believe what was meant was that we were referring to this specific phenomenon when it comes to our planets being aligned a certain way. And it may in fact be pointing to certain events that we can expect to happen during that time or may have already taken place. Now, biblically, that is just one example. There may be others. I chose that one to use. This is also something well known with other religious and spiritual systems, like the Native Americans. Their interpretation of the blood moon is that it's a sign of coming change, right? They interpret it as a cycle of life and death as well. Cherokees in particular believe that it reflects a time where the veil between the living and the dead is actually thinnest, allowing for communication with ancestors, right? And so theirs is a little bit more on the side of spirituality and this very open practice, right? And so I can definitely see that. I do feel like from my personal experience that can definitely, we had at least about, let me see how many we had this year, because it seems like a phenomenon, but it actually happens quite often. There's a lot of reference to tetrads as well, which talks a little bit about phenomenons relating to the blood moon, and it sometimes is made out to be something that's really less common, but actually that's not true. It's actually pretty common. And so talking about tetrads and the blood moons, but let's see how often it happened in 2024. Okay, so in 2024, oh, so we didn't have one in 2024. I thought there was one in 2024. Or in 2023. The next blood moon is going to happen on 2025, like as I said, March 14th. And then there will be another one September 7th of 2025. But that one, so the first one in March will be visible to northern, to America, right? But then the second one will not. It won't be visible to America. Yeah, there will be a few in 26 as well, but there were none in 2024. Interesting. Let me just fact check that really quickly. Let's see. I thought I saw blood moons in 2024, but I guess not. Oh, there was one. There was a blood moon. Yeah, I thought so. I thought there was one. There was one on October 17th. So we just missed it. I'm not sure if it was visible to America. But the blood moon occurred on October 17th at 2024. That was the last one. It was about at 3 a.m. in the morning, Eastern Standard Time. So that would have been about 6 Pacific Standard Time. And it lasted for like a couple of hours. For a few hours, actually. And so that was the last one. So there were blood moons in 2024. But the Native Americans actually have their own interpretation. And one is that there is a thinning of the veil that causes the communication between the living and the dead to become thinnest, right? And then there's other cultures, native cultures like the Incan, and other cultures see it as a sign of possible earthquakes coming or some type of natural disaster. Aztecs saw it as a symbol of sacrifice. And then the Chinese also associated with the moon goddess and change, healing, and rejuvenation as well. Now, anytime we talk about the moon, you know that we are talking about emotional energy, because the moon is dealing with emotions. It's dealing with the mind and the psyche and, the fluidity within that area. And so during this time, it's expected that the emotions will be amplified. The energies around the emotions and the intuition as well. Moon deals with intuition. It also is an indicator pointing to feminine energy as well. Okay. And just so you don't get it twisted, when I say feminine, I'm not talking about a woman. I'm talking about the feminine aspects of our being. Everybody has feminine energy. Yes, men have feminine energy too, just like women have masculine energy. And the feminine part of us is the intuitive, the more receptive. It is the more nurturing side of us, right? And so the amplified energies around emotions and intuition actually are something that we expect around the blood moon. Also a heightened sense, because we're talking about intuition and the thinning of the veil when it comes to spiritual awareness, right? The sense of awareness and self-exploration is heightened because we become more aware and more intuitive, more tapped in to everything, including ourselves. And so this is usually a time where there is a need to have a high level of self-care, right? And this could be a time where we could actually utilize these energies too, to grow and to change things that we want to change, right? Because the energy is so high. If we're able to actually set intentions and direct that energy, it could be very useful. Okay, I just gave you a little, gifty right there. Now, when it comes to courage, there might be a little bit of heightened sense of being, sometimes you just feel like going out and doing something risky. Like you feel that rising up, like you want to go do something different, right? There's a level of courage that is actually heightened as well during the blood moon. And it inspires us to take risks, right? It inspires us to do something a little different, right? Pointing back to the divine feminine energy and intuition, right? It breathes courage and strength and resilience, right? During the time of the blood moon. Again, perfect time to take advantage of the energy. And one of the things that is suggested around this time as it pertains to that energy of courage and wanting to take risks, like this would be a perfect time to take action, take specific action on goals or desires. This would be a perfect time to allow yourself to step outside of your comfort zone to actually pursue or to achieve things high on your goal list, or just plain out to achieve things in life, right? This is also a time where stress can actually be at a halt, all-time high, because as you can tell, the energies, when we talk about the moon, right, we're talking about the ability to have things manipulated, right? We look at the tide of the ocean. You see how it's manipulated by the moon, right? And so there's this energy, and water represents emotions. And so there's this energy in the air that becomes very strong, and it also becomes very unstable, okay? And so if in fact we find that we're not exercising self-care during this time, or we're not setting intentions and utilizing this energy, it may in fact have the opportunity to turn into stress and anxiety, right? Because it's not being utilized, nor is there the awareness of what's happening. And so this is going to be a time of intense energy. And it's going to be a time to really delve into self-care, whatever that looks like, intense self-care. Now, going back to what's happening scientifically with the moon, there is orbits, right, that cause this blood moon. And again, as we mentioned before, the shadow from the earth is called the umbra, is what it's called. And it's fragmented light as the sun is cast onto the earth, causing the blue ultraviolet rays to disappear, and it leaves those colors like the reds and the oranges and the yellows to be cast upon the moon. And that's how we end up with the blood moon, right? And so scientifically, that's just what it is. It's like a happening that happens when that alignment takes place. There's really no symbolism when we look at it scientifically. It's just looking at things as a matter of factly, okay? And as we deal with our connections and our relationships, right, of course it's going to affect those types of things as well. And so these may be times where, again, that energy of being risky and wanting to do something. So you may find a lot of relationships are being pushed forward during this time, or connections. There's a level of intensity that happens in the connections, and there's a lot of challenges and possibly even confrontation in the relationships. This is going to be a time for intentions in connections and relationships. Maybe it's going to be a need to have a lot of open communication, okay? Being intentional about being openly communicative about what's happening and what's going on. This is actually going to be a lot of endings to relationships all of a sudden, possibly even jumping into connections and relationships all of a sudden, because it's going to be that kind of energy. Now, with prophecies, in particular, this is a time that highlights the lunar sequence of the 4 total eclipses. When we go back to 2014 to 2015, where I was talking about the tetrads, right, it was seen as um, something special and something that doesn't happen all the time. And so there was a lot of attention around that, around the blood moon and the tetrads that were happening through that period of time between 2014 and 2015. And then this is also something that falls on Jewish holidays. There's a prophecy that these eclipses fell on Jewish holidays, and it was seen as a sign, right, that related to that scripture in Joel, the apocalypse or the end of times, right? And it was seen as being in conjunction with these tetrads, right? But some would say that it wasn't really all that, it was said to be, because what some people have said was something that only happens like ever so often. Like they found that it actually wasn't as isolated as we would like to think. Some say that it's a natural, common occurrence. And so I didn't take the initiative to take it that far, just to see how often we have experienced the blood moon or the tetrads. If you want to do that, you can. But what I did do is I pulled some oracle cards, because I wanted to take this into a reading, just to take a look at some of the energies that we'll be dealing with as we come into this next blood moon, which is going to be March 14th, 2025. Okay, and so I've been working on this for a few days, and I said, okay, I need to clear my space because I have all this laid out here. I need to clear my space. I need my desk back. And so I had to push myself to come and go ahead and do this, because I put all this work into it. There's no way I'm going to walk away from this after pouring all this energy into it. And so here we are. Okay, and so let's jump in. Thank you for stopping by. It is Blood Moon Oracle, and I hope you're enjoying this. If you are, take a moment to like, share, comment, let me know what you think of the information that we're sharing about the blood moon coming. The next one will be coming in March 14th of 2025, okay? And so we're going to take a look. I do have a couple of different oracle decks out here, coupled with a couple of different tarot decks as well. And so we're going to take a look at the energies coming out here. Let's jump in. I don't see why we should delay the time. And so as I ask Spirit, like, what type of things can we expect around this next blood moon? Like, what kind of energies will be present? What kind of things will happen around that time? And one of the cards that I got was the Spiral Dancer. And the Spiral Dancer talks about a route that is, it can't be something that just goes on a straight line, but it is very busy, unexpected events and turns, right? And so when I pulled this card, I also clarified it with the Four of Wands and the Emperor. And so for this particular energy that came out, we're dealing with the home, is what I found. This is pointing to the home and creativity around the home being ruled by the women in particular. I want to say feminine energy, which it could be as well. But there's this powerful drive that's happening around this next blood moon. And it may be something unexpected, right? It may be something unexpected, but it's going to be a powerful energy that's being carried around the caring for the home or the leadership in the home even, and creativity around that. It's going to be a mixture of leadership and creativity. And also this energy of careful consideration. I feel that as well. Careful consideration. Now, I also pulled out, sometimes it's difficult to pick these cards. So we have the Sacred Union coming out here. And so I do feel like it's going to be a time of very high integrity when it comes to like connections, or I don't want to say couples, but when it comes to partnerships, there's going to be a high level of integrity and a need to see or look for what is right. There's going to be a looking to do what is right and to exist in this very high level of standard, right? Also, I feel like there's going to be a standing against and real and aggressiveness when it comes to tackling what needs to be addressed. There's going to be a excitement around avoiding things that are declining when it comes to humanity, right? It's going to be like avoiding that very animalistic impulse that we all have, but it's going to be aiming for high standard when it comes to dealing with each other, right? And even communicating with each other as well. I feel like it's going to be an abandonment of like some of the things that we've dealt with here in 2024. There's going to be an expressed desire to reach higher in that regard. Yeah. And also, I do feel like there's going to be this desire to encounter like unconscious fears. That things that I feel like for a lot of us, we may in fact have that experience more than expected. We'll be going into that energy of the dark night of the soul. I feel like the blood moon is going to bring in this grand, massive awakening, right? And it's going to set us on this path of dealing with unconscious fears. And this could be on a mass level. This could be just dealing with this individually. A lot of people are going to have that awakening experience during this time. And there's going to be a lot of revealing of truth, personal truth. Yeah, and I feel that really strong because when I pulled to clarify the spiral dancer, one of the things that came out was the Emperor and the Four of Wands, and then the Five of Cups and the Knight of Swords came out. And it really gave me that energy of really wanting to, or not necessarily wanting to, but we're going to end up on a path where we're charting new courses. We're going to be having this very new experience as a whole, and really learning and following through to this level of mastery in new things, and not really backing down from those challenges of seeking the new or holding ourselves to very high levels of expectations and integrity. And it almost feels like this is going to be an energy that is not able to be stopped. Like, we're not going to take no for an answer, right? This will happen, right? We will see this come to pass, and it's going to be something that we want to do. Yeah, that's what I am seeing. Let's see. I also pulled, let's see, the Whale Watcher, which talks about wisdom and power of the divine. The Whale Watcher. And I do feel like talking about wisdom and power of the divine, this was clarified by the Page of Pentacles and the Fool, right? And I feel like we will recognize situations where we have become a little bit stagnant, or where we've refused to release our ego, right? That's going to become obvious, and we're going to recognize that. And I think it may have, with the Page of Pentacles, there's going to be some recognition of overuse of technology in some type of way, how we've become drunk with technology. And there's going to be some level of happening around the internet, like some level of massive, like, magic or something with the internet that's going to be invoked, and it's going to wake us up to the reality of the monster we've created in depending upon technology, right? So there's going to be some level of awakening to the wisdom and the power of the divine. And then in this picture I'm looking at, I'm seeing like an owl perched on his shoulder, right? And so there's going to be like some massive guidance here of wisdom and truth and awakening. And then the number 7 is sticking out all of a sudden. And to me, that always represents some energy of working, of spirituality underneath all of this. Is some pointing to alluding to spiritual things. And I do feel like there is a hard hand that will come down. It's almost like a ruling with an iron sword, right? There's going to be a strong hand that comes down during this time, but it's going to be balanced, though. It's not just going to be for the sake of wanting to rule or wanting to, exert power. There's going to be a balance with truth and kindness, and it points to having to make difficult decisions here that possibly require severe solutions. And so that could easily fit in with, just having to make difficult decisions for the whole, not just for one group of people. This could have something to do with our leadership that will be in place at the time, and having to make difficult decisions, right? But there's going to be some level of leading with an iron fist, I also have the Wise Woman of Wonderland, bringing in integrity and compromise. This brings in a time of interdependence and commonwealth, right? It was clarified by the 6 of Pentacles, balance, and the 2 of Swords. And so this is going to be possibly a time too where there's going to be the need to work together, right? We're going to understand that we're better together. Our ideas and our assets are more powerful when we look out for each other and watch for each other and create, this greater work, not working individually, but looking at it from a greater perspective of the whole. I keep hearing that in a lot of my messages, that we are growing into this idea of looking at things from a perspective or the benefit of the whole. And that's coming out here again. This is possibly going to be a time of recognizing that the need that we have for each other. For those that have a lot, the ambivalence that will be experienced during this time of struggle, and also a time of protection as well. And so that is the actual energies I was getting with the first set of oracle cards. That is going to be a very interesting time. I feel like it does point to mass awakenings that will happen, a mass shift in the way that we're doing things, and I feel like that spirit is actually going to be really involved here. As I stated, there's going to be possibly a lot of people experiencing that energy of the dark night of the soul, having this great massive awakening to truth and confronting, the energies of illusions that we've been under for a long time, right? So I feel like 2025, around March, around this blood moon, is actually going to be very significant. No matter how we look at it or which part of, the symbolisms that we named, it all feels very applicable here. It all feels very applicable here. Now, I also pulled out some more oracle cards and tarot cards, and then we'll go ahead and end it after we take a look at these. The first one was the Sacred Grove, which is pointing to guidance. And this is talking about going into very empowered places and receiving guidance during this time. And it was clarified by the Lovers, the Princess of Coins, and the Four of Swords. And first of all, the guidance oracle card was a 33. Another number that has been coming out a lot in all of my messages, lots of 33s. And the 33 is a number that is a master number. And so whenever we're talking about a master number, we're talking about a concentrated level of energy or possible significance for that person or that particular situation. Overall, we're talking about guidance. The 33 points to leadership and this energy around the teacher, very high frequency of love. It's pointing around the energy of one who serves many. Also, it's connected to like the web, right? As I was saying, there's going to be something that happens with the internet, with the World Wide Web. Something significant about technology will take place, and possibly pointing to the level of magic that it holds, or possibly someone using it in that way. There's something that's going to happen around something being revealed in technology. But This is talking about going within. When we talk about this oracle card, the sacred grove, guidance, this is talking about the ability or our awakening to the ability to go within and find guidance from within. I do feel like I've said it on other messages where we're heading into a time where I feel like we are going to be going within, really looking to our own personal connection with our creator, with our higher source for guidance. I think we're coming into a time where everybody is possibly going to be seeking truth in their own way, right? Instead of being guided and led by someone else, it's going to be this turning inwardly for the guidance from within and really acknowledging the time needed to look within for information and learning, right? The inner teacher is what we're talking about. And I feel like during this time, Saturn could also be delivering opportunities to actually ascend through work, right? Through work that's being put in around real love, and the ability to create, in this new experience and this new awareness that's going to be arising during this time. And so this is going to be a time of ascending too. We're talking about the ability to understand your connection with your source, right? And expand on that and create from that, and to actually connect with that for your inner guidance. And there, when we talk about Saturn, we're talking about lessons and restrictions. There could be things that happen that cause us to actually turn, in this direction. And I totally see that happening because as we look around, it seems like the ability to trust when it comes to placing what it is that you believe in others' hands, it's becoming smaller and smaller, the ability to do that. And it's understanding that we are all on the same journey, and the time of actually placing people on a pedestal or on a platform, right? I think we're coming away from that, and we're coming to a place where we understand that we're all on this journey, the same journey, right? And there really are no hierarchies, you know what I mean? And so Saturn may very well be bringing in lessons around that during this time. This will also be a time with this Princess of Cups of holding wealth and accessing solutions from a soul level, though, right? Our ideas of abundance and wealth may change, and there may come the realization as a whole that the true abundance is inward, right? It's a soul level abundance, and that's where the abundance is created from. It's not outwardly in, but it's coming from within, right? And it's actually shared outwardly. And so this may be a time of opening to a wealth of opportunities to really see that, to really see what we have, what we've always had. And again, it's the ability of social media, of technology to distort the truth, right? It's coming back to the truth of what's always been. But it's almost like for a minute we were pulled away from that for a moment. Yeah, I can't help but share this. Yesterday I watched this documentary. It was a movie rather of Martha Stewart, who I love. Very creative woman. I didn't know a lot about Martha Stewart, but watching this movie really enlightened me. And just watching her life kind of unfold and take twists and turns. She was someone who actually came from very humble beginnings. The family that she was raised up in didn't have a lot, and so they ended up turning to growing most of their food because they didn't have a lot of money to go and get. And so they learned to be very creative and productive growers. And, everybody in the family knew how to grow crops and to cultivate, crops for food. And they ended up selling some of it for other things that they needed. But she had very humble beginnings. But in the humble beginnings, there was some things that were very significant that would play a great part in her success and becoming like one of the only billionaire women, self-made in the world, right? And so, but along this journey, there were lessons that she learned. And one was she learned very early in her career how to align herself with billionaires. And, there was a certain way that I suppose that you would talk and carry yourself, and you would be very knowledgeable about certain things. There's a certain, way of carrying yourself that would cause you to align yourself with these people. And at some point, I'm sure that was very useful in her gaining all of her success. But there came a point in life where there was a turning back. Somewhere there was and then what stood out to me too, right? So she learned how to be acclimated to certain, groups of very wealthy people. And I can only imagine like what changes or what things that was sacrifice to be able to do that, and she says she's always been a very stern person and very perfection driven. And so a lot of people found it very difficult, like to work with her and to be around her. And there was a lot of sacrifices that she made in order to climb the ladder and to attain that level of success. And there was a lot of things that she had to sacrifice in order to do that, right? And so we're talking about holding wealth from a soul level, right? And when we hold wealth from a soul level, that means understanding what's really important. It's not really the wealth per se, but it's what we have inside that gives us the ability to attain it, right? And it's not losing the truth of what that is. Somewhere along the line, I feel like when it was all said and done, now when you look at Martha Stewart, she ends up going, to prison for like 6 months, where she ends up getting to spend some time with some pretty cool people that she probably never would have had she not had that experience. But it was bringing her back to some parts of her beginning, right? I imagine like in all of the hustle and bustle of becoming wealthy, there was probably some things that she forgot along the way. There was probably some things that she sacrificed and gave up, in exchange for the wealth and the money and the fame, but whatever that was, we all have our own path. But it was interesting to see the progression of her life and how, the beauty of being brought back around to what was really, really important, which is that thing that causes her to get out of bed every morning. Not necessarily the money and the wealth, but it's the drive of life. It's being able to access the wealth and solutions from a soul level, right? Being able to be open to opportunities that's presented to her that she sees, right? It's being redirected from pretense to being prepared for what is coming. It's that kind of energy. And so I say that to say about Martha Stewart, I was very amused with her story, and I'm still a fan. I say kudos to anyone who's able to do that, and still remain sane and come back around, and still have that sense of passion and drive for what she does. But I say that to say, when we're talking about understanding wealth from a soul level, it's not so much as being attached to the things that we're able to accumulate in life, but it's more about where that comes from. The ability to create that from within, right? For Martha, it was her drive to create solutions for the everyday average woman, right? And to let the everyday average woman know that you are more than just a housewife. Like, you could also climb a corporate ladder if you want to. You could also go out and create a garden out of your backyard if you want to. The most beautiful thing, You could also, redecorate your home. I can show you step by step. That was her passion, her drive. And that was something that came from a soul level. It was her ability to take what she's passionate about and open up and share that with others. And that's what created wealth for her, right? And it's not losing sight of that thing in the soul that creates the wealth. It's not the wealth that's important, but it's coming back home to self, right? And so I feel like that's what the 33 is definitely tapping into: the heart chakra, the crown chakra, knowing that we are connected, and maintaining this level of integrity when it comes to tapping into our wealth in the heart space. Now, the next oracle card is actually talking about the heart space. We have 26, and we have the camel pose, which is talking about opening the heart space. 26 turns into an 8. Now, 8 is talking about balance. It's talking about spirit versus matter. And so there's going to be, as there always has been, right? But I feel like more than ever during this time of the blood moon, there's going to be a battle happening between the spirit and between the physical, between the flesh. And it's all about expanding. It's all about expanding. 8 is all about expansion, about tackling challenges. It's about knowing that you're able to do it. It's about strength, right? It's about showing up in the material world and maneuvering and manipulating the things to create, right? It's about blessings. And it's about the curve of growing, right? The mastery that's at our hands, and realizing our power, realizing our strength. There is an arising, an awakening, right? During this time that's going to happen. And I feel like it's going to be pointing us back at ourselves, at our ability to show up in the world in a different way. Now, this card was actually clarified by the King of Cups, by the Nine of Wands, and by the Two of Wands as well. So again, tapping into that sacral chakra, our understanding our connection, who we're connected to, and how we relate to that connection. And it's also tapping into our sacral chakra. This is creative energy. It's passion. It's what we would determine to be sexual energy, but it's really creative energy at its core, right? At a base level, it's passionate energy. And so with these three clarifying cards, this is rising and actualizing our dreams, right? Passionately. The main color, though we're talking about the heart chakra, there's a lot of solar plexus energy here in this card. And this is our ability to show up and realize, what we're able to accomplish in the world. And so this is about rising and actuating our dreams and actually ascending through the experiences and connecting it, right? Not only for ourselves, but for the whole, right? This is about agreements that will make connected to the heart, from the heart space. And this is also about being tempted to overwork and to overdo. When we talk about this fiery energy coming from the sacral chakra, there's a warning not to overdo it, right? It's a lot of energy coming out here. Just with this Nine of Wands and this Two of Wands alone, it's easy to overdo it and to do too much. But this may be a time too, because the energies are going to be so high and it's going to be just so fiery and just so passionately driven, right? There's going to be a risk of burnout during this time. This is why it's going to be so important to manage ourselves with self-care. Okay. Remember, we're talking about the 8, and the 8 is all about balance. It's about balancing the spirit with the physical, not being too much over there and not being too much over here, but being like right. Temperance energy is about balance, making sure that everything is right in its correct proportions, making the right balance for what works, right? For some, this is the need to really slow down. There'll be a need to slow down during this time and not take it so fast, because we will be at risk of burnout really quickly. Okay? And just taking a look at these cards, you almost get that sense too, right? See all that sun, all that energy, that's direct energy. And then we have all these highly inspiring energies with all this fire energy with these wands. The Nine of Wands alone is enough to tell you to slow down. Slow down. Okay, we're going to get there. And so this is going to be a time, again, as we have mentioned in some of the symbolisms, of extreme self-care. Not just self-care. This is going to be a time for extreme self-care. And lots of magic with this, all of this sacral energy, this Nine of Wands and this Two of Wands. There's going to be lots of magic, right? Lots of manifestation energy and realizing of potential, right? Coming in through water energy, our emotions. This is going to be an important time to put our commitments in place, not just operating aimlessly, but be grounded with some type of commitment so that the universe, or those that will be in place assisting, will be able to respond to those intentions. And we're not just giving away energy aimlessly, right? And so this is going to be a time possibly to set some commitments, set some goals, get grounded, get focused, and be in some level of routine so that we are able to capture that energy and utilize it effectively. Okay? We have lots of time to prepare too. Now, and we're coming to our last one before we close this out. When it comes to this up and coming blood moon, we have the water goddess, which is talking about being in the flow. We just got to talking about water energy. We'll be doing lots of creation through water energy. This is sacral chakra energy though, but it's coming through water energy. And it's actually a 13, which actually ends up being a 4. Now, whenever we get the number 13 first, before we reduce it to the 4, there's the need to, because 4s talk about stability, it's talking about foundations, it's talking about the core of a system that actually allows it to continue to grow, right? It's the stability under all of the creativity. But when we have the 13 first, before we reduce it to the 4, this might be talking about not giving away our energy and our resources to things that, or to people that may not be appointed to receive that. Not wasting, in other words, for things or people that don't have the ability to take what is given and actually utilize it properly, right? There's a warning here about that. But 4s overall are about foundations, right? Creating systems that work, or framework. It's dependability, good structures, fortification, and solidity. And when we talk specifically about this particular being in the flow, our true nature bodies, our true nature, who we really are, right? It actually embodies the ebb and flow of life's pleasures, of what life has to offer. But it's all about feeling safe to open up and allow that flow, that expression, right, to happen easily without being guarded, without being afraid. It's feeling safe in that way. And really, it's about coming back to self. Kind of like I was saying about Martha Stewart, how she had that coming back home to self moment, right? And that coming back home from self was like very liberating, and it was freeing, right? From a lot of the illusions that was piled on her, that she had collected along on her voyage between the time that she left home and the time that she had this awakening moment, this dark night of the soul. And it's almost like you even feel after coming back, and having this discussion with her after everything has taken place, there's this feel of relaxation that you feel talking with her on the other side of all of these experiences. There's an acceptance that you feel with her, but it's really a coming home to self. Now, this was clarified with the 3 of coins. We still have all that energy. Look at that. All that energy, all of that power, that self-belief, that desire to want to create something massive, something beautiful, something powerful. And then we come back around again with crown chakra energy. Okay? Knowing and operating from the connection. Okay? We have the King of Wands and the 7 of Swords in reverse. Okay? And so during this time of the blood moon, One of the things is lots of coming together, as I stated before, lots of collaborating. And this type of collaboration is going to be pushing us to self-belief, pushing us to be better, and to accessing levels to, identify the processes of working and studying creatively. I feel like the situations that will arise is we'll be placed in situations that's going to bring out the very best in us. And that very best is going to be a little bit of pressure to perform, just a little bit, to keep you on the edge of your very best, right? This is not just, da, 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 da. No, this is top performance here. And then also this unwavering inspiration with the King of Wands. We know the energy that the King of Wands brings, right? Very leadership oriented, exemplifying energy and focusing on higher levels of consciousness, being that he's showing up in the crown chakra section. Very creative, right, when it comes to moving forward and creating legacy without even attempting to do it, right? Setting a path ablaze for others to actually trail it. And so lots of creative challenges. This almost feels like challenging energy, and being really pushed to show up in your very best. That's what it feels like to me. But at the same time, being in this relaxed energy about it, because you're just open to the flow of things, accepting things as they come, dealing with things as they come, but putting your best foot forward. I really do feel like this is going to bring in just new mindsets, new ways of operating and wanting to see the very best in ourselves and each other. Now, with this Seven of Swords coming in reverse, I do feel like this is, because the Seven of Swords is usually untrusting, sometimes sneaky and just not forthcoming, hiding some things, but it's in reverse. So it's almost like a moving away from deceptive practices and breaking away. Not only breaking away, but not leaving anything on the table or not taking shortcuts, not trying to get away on an easy path or take the easy path, but it's actually accepting the challenges as they come and actually putting in the work to overcome any challenges and not cutting yourself short, not accepting the easy route just because it's easy. I feel like this is actually a high level of resolve to see the very best during this time. I'm excited because, some of the last few years has been very difficult, right? Even up until this moment, there's been some difficult moments and some difficult situations to accept. But, seeing this, it feels like the beginning of next year. This is going to be again around March or so. It feels like there may be a lot of beautiful things happening that we can attribute to evolution, to things just taking the natural course, right? Because again, this is going to be a time where things are going to be perfectly aligned, which is going to bring in this energy, right? And so I'm excited. And so mark my words, right? The blood moon. Let's see if we can actually measure some of these things that are going to happen here in terms of the energies that we'll be working with. Let's see, what else? Let me know if you have any questions about my little moment that I'm sitting here teaching and reading and open to discovery at the same time. If you have any questions or any comments, please do share them. I welcome all comments, whatever you have, and I appreciate it. This has been a presentation on the blood moon that is headed our way. The next one will be March 14th of 2024. Whatever position you take, you may take the spiritual position, you may take the religious position, that we are in the end times. You may take the scientific position that, it's just going to be perfectly aligned for a beautiful view, right? Whatever position you take, it's all good, right? But I do feel like there's something that we're all going to share in, and it's going to be this energy here, this massive energy of transformation and awakening. I think that's the one thing that we can say that was consistent through all of those lists of symbolisms as we all look at this phenomenon from our own perspective. All of the things that was named had some type of relating to transformation, meaning things are changing or will be going through some type of change. Now, it also stated that it could get a little uncomfortable too. Okay? Things could get a little uncomfortable. And depending on whether or not we're ready to really acknowledge and accept the truth as it's being revealed, could determine whether or not we're ready for this transformation. But whether we're ready or not, I feel like it's coming. And so definitely some ways to be prepared for what is to come and for something beautiful that we can look forward to, okay? The next blood moon. All right, thanks for stopping by. It has been Blood Moon Oracle. Until next time, thanks for stopping by, and I will see you soon. Bye.